Alright guys, here we are, another win under the belt. Trump has signed an executive order that has barred men from being able to compete in women's sports, and he did so in the most boss way you could possibly do it, surrounded by young women and girls who want to keep men out of their sports. Now, they tried to gaslight us into thinking this was a non-issue, or that we're transphobes for thinking it's an issue, but here we are in the new day, where now our president has said, no more men in women's sports. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Guys, before we get into today's video, please like and subscribe. Yes, today we're finally doing a video on this whole issue of trans athletes in women's sports. And it's not a video where I have to explain why this is an issue. It's actually a video about somebody doing something about the issue, and that's President Donald Trump. We're gonna start off with a video of him signing his executive order that keeps men out of women's sports.
So, I want to make this a really good signature. This is a big one, right? Oh, I think we have a 10. We have a 10. God bless you.
I gotta say, who's ever on the marketing team at the White House is really doing their job. The optics on this are fantastic, bringing together a bunch of young women and girls, many of whom are athletes and who have been doing work on this issue so that they can watch you get something done and sign this executive order. It's truly amazing. In the crowd, you might have recognized Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, two swimmers who actively spoke out against the NCAA when Leah Thomas was competing against them. And we all know that Leah Thomas, who was ranked in the 400s as a male swimmer, flew to the #1 spot as a female swimmer and identifying as such. And they started a years-long battle against this issue and gender ideology and its infiltration into women's sports and spaces. And it seems like that battle has paid off. Now we'll read a little bit about what this executive order actually means. This is out of BP News. It says the order titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports gives federal agencies wide latitude to ensure entities that receive federal funding abide by Title IX in alignment with the Trump administration's view, which interprets sex as the gender someone was assigned at birth. You know I disagree with this whole assigned at birth thing, but we're gonna keep rolling with it. We can at least understand what's happening here. Now, you will all remember homeboy Biden. In between naps, he decided to rewrite Title IX, and he essentially couldn't figure out, I guess, what it means to be a woman or a girl. And in his rewrite of Title IX, he actually enshrined protections for transgender students and athletes, and essentially said, if you're a young man or boy who wants to compete with girls, go ahead and do so, and you'll be protected by the federal government in doing so. And Trump has obviously come through on his promise to fix up the disastrous change that took place with Title IX, and he's now protected women's spaces and sports.
Come on. Secret Service is worried about them?
Now, of course, many are not happy about this change, and we're gonna get into some responses from some very angry leftists. But before we do that, I'm gonna show you a headline out of ESPN so you can see how the news is framing this work that Trump is doing. This says, President Donald Trump will sign an executive order Wednesday designed to prevent people who were biologically assigned male at birth from participating in women's or girls' sporting events. Let's read that again. Biologically assigned male at birth. That is 5 words to say man. 5 words to say boy, which is what we should be saying all along, but still we are deeply entrenched in this woke leftist language that changed the very nature of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Biologically assigned male at birth. You can't make this up. Now, if they're not twisting the language in response to this executive order, they're twisting the outcome of this executive order. Emma says, let's create the Tim Walz photo op, but instead of feeding children in school, how about we drive some trans kids to suicide? This sort of feels like an emotional blackmail of sorts. You know, if you don't do things the way that I like them, if you don't bend your reality to the way that I see mine, I'm going to harm myself, or trans kids are going to harm themselves. I'm sorry, that is not the way we lead our lives, and we cannot just bend and shape our reality based on how somebody's emotions are going to be on the other end of recognizing the true reality. First of all, I don't even think this statement is true. I think that Emma is catastrophizing this entire situation. But let's go ahead and lean into to her interpretation and assume that it is true, that there are some trans kids somewhere, meaning young men and boys, who are so distraught about their inability to be in women's spaces, be in their sports, and defeat them in their sports, that they're willing to take their own lives? Does that scream mental wellness to you?
It's not personal.
I'm gonna kill myself!
Wow.
I'm going to kill myself, and it's your fault!
And this seems to be one of the prevailing left-leaning arguments, that because these individuals may put themselves in a state of danger, we need to protect them. And in order to protect them, we have to actually endanger women and girls who are just trying to live their daily lives. I mean, this is common sense, I fear. And nobody speaks common sense better than Donald Trump sometimes.
Administration will not stand by and watch men beat and batter female athletes, and we're just not going to let it happen, and it's going to end, and it's ending right now, and nobody's going to be able to do it.
The argument that Emma's making is sort of similar to what a lot of gender practitioners are doing when parents come with distraught children who are experiencing gender dysphoria. They'll say, do you want a new son or a dead daughter? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I think there's a whole lot of options in between the two things that you just proposed. And the very same thing can be said about transgender athletes competing in women's sports. We have a whole lot of options. And option number one for me is not allowing men and boys into female spaces in sports. But moving on, here's another response from Evan. Evan says the number of trans NCAA athletes is literally 40 people. This is a sick moral panic. Now, this is another common tactic used by leftists. They'll say this isn't even an issue. Trans athletes aren't competing against women. If they are competing against women, it's the same thing as a biological woman competing against a biological woman. And then you show them evidence to the contrary. You show them women who are losing out in their sports or being beaten up out on the field as they're playing a game, and they go, well, it's only a few athletes doing it though. So is it a non-issue or is it a small issue? And if it's a small issue, does it mean we do nothing about it? Now, of course, I grant that it is a large issue, and it's an issue that will cascade and snowball into an even bigger one if we do not stop it in its tracks. But your argument that there's only 40 NCAA athletes doesn't quite hold water. Not to mention that according to a UN study, there have been 900 medals given to trans athletes competing in women's sports and 600 female athletes affected by that. So either you're 40 NCAA trans athletes are super active, or it's a bigger issue than you're letting on. And of course, we have commentary from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Let's read her tweets. On National Girls and Women in Sports Day, Trump is banning trans kids from playing sports, trying to cut Title IX women's and girls' athletic grants, removing references to women, female, and equality on government websites. Let me be clear, this doesn't protect women. First of all, Jasmine, when you say banning trans kids from playing sports, you mean banning men and boys from playing girls' sports, which absolutely should be done. I'm assuming when she says trying to cut Title IX women's and girls' athletic grants, that means if they've violated the Title IX that he's rewritten based off of what President Joe Biden put forward, which inherently didn't protect women and girls, and removing references to women, female, and equality on government websites. I can only imagine, and you guys can fact check me on this if I'm wrong, he's probably going through and taking out all the DEI, gender-based, feminist bullshit that is all over our government websites and going, you know what, that needs to be removed. And within those removals will probably be words like women, female, and equality. I think we can deal with it, especially with somebody who's actively making moves on a daily basis to protect women and girls in this country. Okay, now this last tweet from Alex Cole isn't even about the issue of trans athletes in sports. He's decided to make it about race. He says there are no black or brown girls allowed in Trump's White House. That's DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just don't even know what to say to that, you know? I'm imagining that there wasn't a sign at the door that says,
no black and brown girls are allowed in this room for this signing.
This just so happened to be the people who showed up. And if you're offended by the skin color of the people who have shown up for this executive order signing, that feels more like a you problem than a them problem. Guys, I'm running out of steam here. And you know what? That's okay, because most of America agrees with me on this issue, that young boys and men should not be competing against girls in their sports. Let's watch a clip.
I think these numbers are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports, back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, you know, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years.
And there you have it. It's almost as though the more we get acquainted with this issue, the more that we see young women and girls beaten up as they're playing sports, or we watch the likes of Leah Thomas, Aman Khalif, Fallon Fox enter female spaces and completely dominate them, we'd recognize something needs to be done about this issue. And it's not just allowing frivolously men and boys to enter female sports and compete against them. So
I'm a strong woman! Look at it! It's mine! I'm the best!
There's that. And we're going to close out today's video with not words of my own, but words from JK Rowling, who we featured on this channel many a time, who's been doing tremendous work on the issues of gender theory, gender ideology, and its impact on women in our daily lives. JK says, congratulations to every single person on the left who's been campaigning to destroy women's and girls' rights. Without you, there'd be no images like this. Couldn't have said it better myself, guys. We got a big win today, and I got to give a huge shout out to every single person who played a part in making this happen. Today's a good day, and it should be treated as such. Have a good one. I will see you guys next time. If you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, duke it out in the comments down below, but do so respectfully. We encourage healthy debate on this channel. And with that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.